I started by joking about the G7 summit, but none of that. It's all funny, but it's not really a joke. I mean, sometimes you can't even keep up with satire. Biden was a laughingstock, and the terrible thing is, of course, our press, which is now the voice of corporate America, right? It is no longer an independent bunch of, kind of semi-educated tough guys going around puncturing, telling truth to power and puncturing the egos of the powerful. No, it is now part of the power structure. Our news media is part of the power structure. And so they're going, oh, Joe Biden, oh boy, Putin is going to be so quaking in his boots. I mean, Putin was like, kills people for a living, basically. Is going to be quaking in his boots. And I'm just going to show you, I could do the entire show about this, but I got to show you just a couple of clips. Maybe you've seen some of them already, of Biden in this G7 meeting. He's in Cornwall in England. He's in a restaurant. This is cut 12. He's in a restaurant. And he wanders around and he basically gets lost. He can't find his way to the table. And some reporters start shouting questions at him. And he's looking around in a daze. And Jill comes over and she carts him off to his table. Just take a look at this.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President?
I beg your pardon?
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
Really nice to meet you. They always do.
And they're all laughing at him, and and he's the way he walks. I mean, he even looks like, he looks like he's had a stroke or something. I don't know, or maybe it is just dementia. He barely can walk. His shoulders are slumped. He was with Boris Johnson, who was introducing the leaders, and Biden introduced, I think it was the president of South Africa, and Biden then says to him, "Oh, and you haven't introduced the president of South Africa." It's cut 11.
President Ramaphosa, President Moon, in just a minute.
And the President of South Africa.
And the President of South Africa, as I said earlier on.
Oh, you did?
I certainly did.
But you're going to mention it twice. So.
I'll go over that again. Let me tell you, we're delighted. Mr. President, I'm going to say
I mean, they're covering for him. They're laughing at him. They're covering for him. This is our country. The press is going, oh, how wonderful. Oh, how wonderful. It's so much better than that Donald Trump who demanded things and wanted, he wanted to include Putin in the G7. Okay, so it's true. Trump was divisive. He was not, did not play well with others. We all know it. But he wasn't this doddering. I mean, this is embarrassing. I want to play just one more because this happened a lot. He was answering questions from reporters, and this happened again and again. Here's one reporter asked him about sanctions. This is cut 9.
You've kept in place some Trump-era steel and aluminum sanctions. And I wanted to ask you, when you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans to
120 days. Give me a break. Need time.
120 days. Give me a break. I mean, this is a guy who's been in government. This is like, when they had the Trojan War, they left him behind. They left Joe Biden behind to take care of empty Greece as they sailed off to Troy. I mean, this guy's been in government forever. He yelled at one woman reporter and had to apologize because she was a woman. And we all know women and men are equal except when you yell at them and then women get upset. So he had to apologize to her. It's just... I'm sorry, but it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. And I even feel bad for Biden. I feel bad that he's up there as this toy who's basically a ventriloquist dummy that the left can speak through. And they won't even admit the fact. They won't even admit the fact that the reason they're using him is because nobody wants them. They have to hide behind him because nobody wants what they're selling. Nobody wants critical race theory. It's disgusting. Nobody wants to have their children carted off and their little boys carted off and turned into girls at the behest of the sick people who work for the state. Nobody wants this stuff. So they have Joe Biden as kind of dangling puppet on a string, and they're talking through him. But he's not capable. He is not capable of doing this. They didn't, there were no accomplishments to the G7 meeting. They make noise about we're going to fix the sun. They're going to send a rocket to the sun so they can dial it down a little. But don't worry, they're going to send it at night so they won't get burned up. It's just a bunch of, just a show. Walter Russell Mead, one of my favorite writers about the international scene, he said, what would winning look like? He said it would look like getting Russia to withdraw from Syria, or as Biden calls it Libya. It would get, getting him to withdraw from the Donbass and Crimea. A diplomatic victory would be with China agreeing to dismantle military bases on artificial islands in the South China Sea. Success would involve getting Iran to stop arming and funding armed militias and terrorist groups in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. None of that is going to happen. And then he went off to Switzerland to meet with Putin, and Putin always he's made monkeys out of all our leaders, because they cannot believe what a gangster he is. I don't know. I hear people on both the left and the right, Glenn Greenwald on the left and Tucker Carlson on the right. I hear them saying, saying, oh, why are we picking on Putin? Why are we picking on this guy? This is all this neoconservatism. It's all this belligerence. And I don't want to be belligerent. I don't want to go to war with Russia. But the man is a gangster. He is a gangster. He reaches out and kills reporters on free soil. He kills reporters who are in Britain, as well as killing his own people and attacking gay people and, basically using religion, which he doesn't believe in, to control people. So why is everybody so happy to see Joe Biden? Why is the G7 covering for it? Well, French President Emmanuel Macron said it best. This is cut 28.
I think it's great to have the U.S. president part of the club and very willing to cooperate.
The club. He's part of the club. Well, what does that mean? I'll read from Dan Henninger because he said it well in the Wall Street Journal. He says the club Mr. Biden is joining is one the U.S. has stayed out of since World War II. That is the club known as the European welfare state. It is the government-directed system of lifetime paternalism built up by the nations of Western Europe after 1945. Maintaining this welfare infrastructure with taxes and debt occupies virtually every waking moment of its leaders, okay? Taxes and debt to keep this welfare state going, which, as I said, turns Europe into an old age home for young people. They are taken care of from the beginning of their lives to the end of their lives. If the government says, oh, you have to retire a few years later so you can make enough money to fund the welfare state, they riot. Because they have no way of voting about these things. They just riot if that's what happens. The European post-welfare state is the state of a culture in decline. This is the thing. This is true of life and it's true of countries, right? Dying is easy. Living is hard, right? To become more than you are at this moment takes effort. To be better than you are, to not devolve into vice and to, chasing after every pleasure that destroys you and enslaves you. That takes effort. That takes willpower. That takes discipline. If you let yourself go and you just do whatever you feel like doing, which is what the left constantly wants you to do, you become a slave, right? You can't take care of yourself. You can't maintain a family. You can't maintain a life. You can't get a job. And that's why they want to keep funneling money at you. So you can't take care of yourself and they can take care of you. Why? Because they love you? No, not because they love you. They don't even know your name. They don't love you. They want to take care of you because taking care of you means they get to make all the decisions. They're the powerful people. So when Europe has this welfare state, it's not because they're more civilized than us. It's whenever somebody says all the other countries have universal health care, that's not because they're more civilized than us. It's because they're dead. It's because they're dead. See, they don't have armies like we have armies. Why? Because they know our army will defend them. Britain, France, Germany, they can't defend themselves from an invasion by China or Russia. They know China and Russia don't invade them because they know they'll have to fight with us. And we pay for that, and we pay for it. We pay for it through our taxes that are high that deliver a lot of money because we have capitalism, because we don't have socialism. Socialism is decay. They know. They have single-payer health care because we pay so much for drugs. Why do we pay so much for drugs? Because they need the money for research and development to develop new drugs. The insidious thing about universal health care is that you don't feel the fact that 10 years from now, there won't be a cure for cancer that they might have been, that 50 years from now, your kids might not have to deal with Alzheimer's. We don't see that not happen, right? It only happens when you have the kind of capitalist system, the competitive free market system, let's call it a free market system, a competitive system, a system that can charge what things are worth, that will fund those things. Those advances only happen that way. Europe doesn't care because Europe is dead. A welfare state is a dead state. A socialist state is a dead state. It's a state of nature. This is what happens. We decay. We are like conservatives, as I always say, we're like the doctors. We're trying to hold off that day. And we know we can't do it forever because everything that's made by mortal men will die. But we can do it today, and then we can do it tomorrow, and then we can do it the day after that. So here, I want to point you to a little story that maybe you saw, maybe you didn't. ProPublica, which is a left-leaning website, did a piece where they received the stolen tax returns of very wealthy people. I think Warren Buffett was one of them, a bunch of wealthy people. And they and they said, well, we don't know who gave us these IRS documents, which of course is illegal, right? It's illegal to tell your IRS documents are supposed to be personal and protected, but somebody, probably within the IRS, leaked these documents to ProPublica, which then published them and did a big story about how the rich were not paying enough taxes, right? And I'm going to get to that in a minute because it wasn't true. But I just want you to remember that this is at the moment when Joe Biden wants to raise all the tax rates on the rich and on corporations, right? So this is a planned tax leak by the IRS to support, by someone in the deep state, let's say. It's by someone in the deep state to support Joe Biden. Remember all the leaks we got every time Donald Trump got on the phone with a foreign leader and we found out about it through a leak, and they even had that stupid impeachment over this harmless conversation he had with the Ukrainian president just because of leaks. How many leaks have there been about what Biden is saying on the phone? 0, 1, 2, none, almost none, virtually none. It was happening every day with Trump. So we know that this deep state, this power center, wants certain kind of people in power, these leftists, and doesn't want other kind of people in power. And that's all part of the system that I'm calling the Great Forgetting, because if we remember who we are, if we remember what we stand for, if we remember what the Constitution says, if we remember what Jesus said, we're not going to let these bums, these unelected bums, faceless bums, anonymous bums, hand our private records to newspapers, which then publish them in order to say, oh, taxes should go up. Are the rich paying no taxes? No. What ProPublica did was they said, we're going to reckon their true tax rate. This tax rate says that their records say, oh, they're paying, I don't know what it was, 35% or something like this. But yeah, they said they were paying an average of 32% of their income in federal income taxes. But ProPublica said, no, we calculated their true tax rate and they're only paying 3.4% in income taxes. Oh, the outrage. Oh, the horror. Why aren't these rich people paying more than 3.4% in income taxes? Here's why. When ProPublica figured out their true tax rate, what they took into account was unrealized income. So what does that mean? That means you own a house, right? You bought your house for $50,000. You've been living in your house for 10 years. It's now worth $65,000. You don't get taxed on that. The IRS doesn't come in and say your house is worth more, we're taxing you on that. Why? Because you're living in the house. You haven't got any extra money. They would be taking away money you haven't made. That money is what you build your life on. That money is how you save your wealth. That money is how you create wealth. And that created wealth goes into the system, right? When you make money, you go to the restaurant. The restaurant makes money. When the restaurant guy makes money, he buys something. He buys a boat. That spreads the wealth around. When these rich guys like Warren Buffett, make money, they invest it. When that investment goes up, they don't get taxed on that because they're not seeing the money any more than you are on your house, right? They don't see that money. That's unrealized income. So Warren Buffett isn't being taxed on that, but ProPublica is calculating his wealth as if that wealth should be taxed. Well, what does Warren Buffett do with his investments? He creates businesses. He creates jobs. He gives people their dreams. I have a dream to build a business. Oh, there's some investment money. Now I can do what I dreamed of doing. Now I can take this idea I had while I was in the shower and turn it into jobs for 100 people. That's what Warren Buffett does. You don't have to like him. You don't have to be glad he's rich. You don't have to agree with his politics, but that's what he does for a living. The guy drives around in a beater, in an old jalopy. He's not spending his money, like throwing his money away. He uses it to invest. And if they take that money away, then who gets to use it? Guess who? The government. So their theory, their thesis that they're putting forward is that a guy who, let's face it, whether you like him or not, again, is a financial genius, Warren Buffett, he can invest that money as well as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's an ignoramus, right? Somehow this ignoramus knows exactly what to do with that money. I'm going to invest it in green, in things that are colored green, because in 8 years the world is going to die because the sun is so hot. That's what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to do. Warren Buffett goes, that guy with that, who wants to build a bookstore has a good idea. I'm going to give him some money. That's what Warren Buffett does, and that's how we all get so rich. And by the way, that, as somebody pointed out in the Wall Street Journal, that is how the bottom 20% of American earners, the poorer people in this country, that's why they receive $45,000 a year in transfer payments. That doesn't come from socialism, folks. That comes from capitalism. That comes from investment. That comes from not taxing these guys, but letting them do what they want to do. My point about this is that this reveals, this leak by the deep state to corporate newspapers, to news outlets who are also in league with the deep state. This is part of this massive, massive foe that we are facing. These guys who believe in the death of Western culture, these guys who believe in the socialist death. Why? Because socialism means one thing. When you have capitalism, you have this kind of step of rich people and poor people. You have poorer people, slightly richer people, richer, going way up. And everybody is richer than anyone has ever been before. Even the poorest person in America is richer than anyone has been before. I mean, you can walk into a 7-Eleven and buy a meal that Henry VIII never had, basically, I mean, in this country, because capitalism has made us all rich. This never happened before capitalism. Before capitalism, everybody was poor. Even the rich were poor before capitalism. But now all this creation, all this wealth creation has made everybody rich. And listen, I believe in capitalism with values. I believe that you can't have capitalism without Christian values. I do not believe that making money is the end of all life, or that making money shows you're a good person, or that making money should elevate you above other people in terms of your rights. I don't believe any of that. We still have to have rights, but capitalism, free trade, governed by values, is a great, great system. And socialism, and it's a system that requires effort, it requires risk, it requires daring, it requires loss, it requires pain, it requires getting off your tail and starting again, even though everything you love has been destroyed. It requires all those things because it's alive. It's alive. Where socialism is dead. Socialism, you just sit there and they give you money and go like, this is good, I have money now. And now I put my child in a class and now he's a girl and everything is great. That's what socialism is. Socialism, you do the work, they decide how to spend the money. Capitalism is you take the work, you do the work, you decide how to spend the money, but you also take the risk. My point here is that Europe and the deep state and the corporate culture that wants all the power and doesn't want you to have any of the power, all of these are the same people. They are all the same people. And guess what? China is the same people too. So when we say, how are we going to change this? It's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to be Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump or anybody else who changes it. It's going to be us, one day at a time, infiltrating and taking back the systems, the institutions, the same way they did for 70 years. This is a big enemy. This is a big foe. This is not some, fat idiot who stands up at in a school and spouts this racial theory that's such nonsense. It's not them. It's not the little people who are doing it. It's these enormous power structures that we are going to have to bring down brick by brick by brick. And so that's why there should be no whining. There should be no waiting for someone to rescue us. It's something we have to do. We're the cavalry, and we have to show up.